And we are live. What's up, wrestling fans? That is really orange and kind of blazy. What's up, wrestling fans? We are live and early. This is the Two Bros Wrestling Show coming at you. I'm kind of over modulating there.
And Doug, you can actually see people better now. You're
I
putting your
can.
glasses there
I
to
can
make
see
sure that
everybody
you
out
can
there in
see into the homes of the Two Bros Wrestling Show universe.
not
Can we
creepy
use
at
as that?
all.
Not at all. Thank you for joining us early, everyone. If you are watching the live version of the broadcast, we are early because NXT Vengeance Day is at 8 o'clock. We do not want to overlap with the pay-per-view. There are some great matches on tap, and to make sure we keep it at a tight hour, Doug, I say let's go ahead and get to it.
Let's
We're going
do
to have a
this.
main event of talking about fixing AEW. So that is our main event. We're going to fix AEW for Tony Khan. And Doug, there's a lot to talk about there because there's a lot of problems.
It sounds like the wrestling world has a lot of problems right now, but I'm sure we'll discuss that in the news.
Nice segue. Opening bell time. Ding ding. We're going to start with
Ding
a few
ding.
updates on the stories, the major stories from the last week. Obviously, the biggest story in all wrestling continues to be the fallout of the Vince McMahon sex trafficking lawsuit and his resignation. We learned of that resignation, of course, last week, thanks to an internal memo leak. And then, of course, Vince, in his denial against the allegations against him, pretty much, laying it on the table. It's official now, though, about the resignation. TKO on Monday had to inform the United States Security and Exchange Commission of Vince's exit via an 8K filing. As you'll recall, though, last time McMahon had resigned once before in a very similar fashion when an internal investigation into his hush payments to the lady who is suing him now, as well as others, he managed to, of course, orchestrate a return thanks to actually it was against the WWE board's wishes, if you recall, leading to resignations and him filling those spots with loyalists. We didn't point this out, and it's probably important to point out the biggest difference between this resignation and the last resignation is the creation of TKO and after this Endeavor sale. Vince no longer has the same voting share power, making it way less likely that that path back to the company exists anymore for him at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Before he owned the majority of the company, I believe his stock in WWE is about 11% now. So there's plenty of others that can vote him off and away. So,
and in fact, there are a lot of reports going around that all those loyalists within the company are feeling targeted themselves by TKO. Apparently, there's a lot of unease by those who had been considered Vince lackeys in the past
sure.
that TKO is looking to clean the swamp, so to speak. And the departure, honestly, of Kevin Dunn, which we've reported about a few times now, his departure last month is seen as a sign that this could very well be true. Naturally, we're going to have way more on this story, Doug, because this story is only at the beginning, really.
Only at the beginning. This is going, this Vince kicked off this year just like he did last year, just right up in the news, all up in that news.
All up in that news. We will continue to follow it here in our opening bell news segment, as well as having a full broadcast dedicated to it at a later date. But Doug, let's go ahead and talk about the other big news from last week. Just an update on that, and that, of course, being the WWE's Netflix deal, seeing the streamer take over the PLEs internationally. One thing we did not point out, we probably should have pointed out, and some folks have obviously been asking that question, is what does this mean for the WWE network? And if you're an international fan watching this, thank you, first of all. But also, you know that the WWE network is still the home for WWE's amassed content library, as well as the PLEs. We all lost that in the United States when Peacock became the domestic homes to those PLEs. As you all remember, in the United States, that meant the shuttering of the WWE network here. Well, it's continued to exist in most of the rest of the world, but this Netflix deal will be the official end of the WWE network as we know it. They will be pulling the plug as soon as the Netflix deal takes effect. There's so much more that we don't yet know about this. Is Raw going to be 3 hours still? Will you have commercials? If you have the commercial-free version of Netflix, will you not have commercials? will all the content of the WWE Network, is all the archive material and things coming along onto the Netflix platform in the rest of the world. So all of that is things we will definitely have to parse through as we get closer. But for now, just know that if you enjoy the WWE Network, and Doug, I don't know about you, but I mean, the Peacock deal works out nicely, but I kind of miss the network being a dedicated service.
Absolutely. Peacock it works well, but I do absolutely miss the network. Absolutely.
So for those of you who have had the pleasure of continuing to watch on the WWE Network, enjoy it while you can. It is going away. Doug, the big story, I guess, that really is new to this week, that isn't a follow-up, and that is all of the shuffling around of the WrestleMania planning that has, this time of year, it's always going to be fluid, right? You have the unexpected you have to deal with, but thus far, this Mania season has been thrown an unprecedented number of curveballs. Just, things have long been settled on the female side and remain rather unchanged as far as what the reports are for the planning there. We're starting to see that come together. That hasn't been the case on the men's side. So at one point in time, Mania looked fairly locked in on Rhodes and Roman, Seth versus Punk, and then Lesnar versus Gunther.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And what
CM
matches those would have been, really? I mean,
it would have been it was stacking up. Obviously, 40 is a significant number. They were making a big deal about the fact this was going to be a special Mania. That is a strong card. Those matches, none of those matches are happening.
No.
CM Punk tore his tricep in his first in-ring appearance in WWE since his return. Happened during the Rumble. Same injury that pretty much kept him out of action for most of his very controversial final year in AEW. The rehab for that's usually 4 months, which means minimum. That's putting him past Mania. This is not going to be Punk's year to headline Mania. Then you had Seth Rollins, who suffered a grade 2 MCL tear. And his promo, he indicated he wanted to be ready for Mania, but that recovery time also puts him pretty close to that bubble of Willy Woney. At this point, though, it seems pretty much a given that due to all the other shuffling around, that whatever he has in the tank to give, he will almost out of necessity be forced to give in order to give another marquee matchup. And then, of course, Brock Lesnar. That's not an injury. That is related to our opening story. Yeah.
That's a Vince issue.
And in fact, Doug, I don't know, you might have seen this too. There are some, considering Lesnar's age and just how long lawsuits can drag out and just the nastiness involved, new owners. I mean, it's not Vince and Brock being his boy anymore. We may have actually seen the last of Brock Lesnar, not just out of, being pulled from Rumble and not being at Mania. At the very least, it's very safe to say we will not be seeing Brock Lesnar for a very, very long time.
Agreed. It is going to be a while. I mean, this is going to have to run its course through due process and all those legal things. Like you say, it's going to take a while for that, and that's going to keep him off TV unless he's suddenly exonerated and removed from this at some point, which I doubt is a thing that's going to happen. Just the way, I mean, even if he is at some point exonerated completely, it's not going to be anytime soon because the law just doesn't move like that.
No, and the smell and the smell of this being so close to him, he's going to be associated with it for a while, even if it's not centered on him.
Yeah, but absolutely.
Hey, if you're a board member sitting around WWE with a newly found credibility in the incentive of $30 million to save WrestleMania, you break the glass on yourself, I guess. And
I guess you lean hard into things and say, no, I got this. No, I really got it.
It is important to note that all the reports that have come out since everything we know since Friday is that despite the Rock's promo in January, this was not the plan. This was not the plan all along. The match would have been Roman Cody, and the Rock Roman match would have happened later. Doug, I think you said it yourself. Saudi show.
Saudi would have been a great place for it. Yeah.
There's a lot of folks that were saying that that's exactly where it was headed. That SummerSlam even, or maybe even hold it all the way off, tease it till Mania of next year. But as we now know, there has been a pivot, and it's been widely reported that pivot was instigated by The Rock himself. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the E's belief, I guess, that The Rock was now needed to quote unquote save the Mania card, thus interrupting Rhodes's story for now. Doug, I've seen some mixed reactions actually on this creative decision. I know everyone wanted Reigns for so many years now that I guess we've talked ourselves all thinking it was
Mm-hmm.
even going to happen. But I don't know that under the circumstances with the cards everyone was dealt, this seems like a reasonable execution of, hey, we got to have a marquee.
It seems like a reasonable execution. I don't know. I don't particularly like, the champions running down the belts like they did on Monday
Yeah.
and on Friday night. I don't like that at all. I don't like I, I don't like the way that and I know I'm going to shock everybody by saying this, but I don't like the way Cody's been done in this situation.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean they have truly built this up as a story, and if just by the YouTube clip alone, which I think is probably over 500,000 dislikes at this point, my nephew and I were watching it click along this weekend. 80,000 likes, 500,000 or 400,000 dislikes. We're wondering, how quickly it'll get to a million, and then and then the Rock's tone deaf reaction to this, where today on X he's talking about what a great reaction he got and how he's looking forward to this, but and then as an aside, oh yeah, tough skin, it'll be fine. I don't know. It could have
We
been
don't know.
executed better. I think it could have been executed better if this is the way they're going to go, because I do agree it seems completely reasonable, but just for Cody to hand it over the way it was written, the way it was done, I don't like it.
And a lot of folks are in that agreement with you. And who knows, there's twists and turns that are storyline driven between now. We got Elimination Chamber and other ways that may throw a few more curveballs, but is looking pretty set right now. And we'll continue to follow both the on air and the behind the scene news as WrestleMania develops.
Indeed.
One last follow up to last week, as we spoke of course, the firing of SmackDown announcer Kevin Patrick and the domino effect of that. We now know is Pat McAfee has rejoined WWE, not just for a one-off like we may have thought on a Rumble card, but this time he has been repaired on Monday Night Raw with Michael Cole. The duo previously were a pretty popular team for more than a year over on the SmackDown side. Of course, that led us all to think, well, Doug, your announcer of the year is bumped. What's happening to Wade Barrett?
Right.
Wade's moved back to SmackDown, while former color commentator Corey Graves will move over a chair and be given an opportunity to do play-by-play. One night is not enough to judge anything, but hot take is that it's going to take me a while to get used to the two heel color commentators working together and not think that somebody's got to be the straight man, and that's now got to be Corey. I thought he did a good job. Obviously, he's well versed on the product and on wrestling, so I'm willing to give this one a chance.
Sure, absolutely. I very early on, I didn't quite get Corey Graves. I didn't understand, and while after it became clear he couldn't wrestle anymore because I believe concussion issues, why Triple H, back in the NXT days, saw something in him. It took me a while to come around to him, but Corey is good at his job. He really is. I mean, he's no Excalibur, but who is really?
And let's see what he does. He might really blossom as the lead commentator on SmackDown. Yeah. So congratulations to that new team. Definitely a change was needed. I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll delve a little into AEW before we get to our main event topic. It's not all just WWE making news. We have a health update on Kenny Omega. Obviously, Kenny has been sidelined due to diverticulitis that was so severe it had previously been reported his life could have been hanging in the balance. Not just a minor bout of diverticulitis. It was reporting that he was facing indefinite hiatus due to his surgery being delayed. We have some positive news, though. The reason that the surgery was delayed is apparently the antibiotic treatments seem to be working.
Yay.
Surgery may still be a possibility, but it's just still great to hear any forward movement that the cleaner is improving. We wish him all the best on a full recovery.
Absolutely. Get well soon, Kenny.
We had a lot of free agent news here to discuss in the last few weeks, but none is going to rock the wrestling world quite like this one. What was once rumored has become official that New Japan's biggest star, Kazuchika Okada, would be entering free agency, ending a 14-year spell with that promotion, becoming the biggest free agent in all of wrestling. The question now is, where will he go? And depending on what day over the last couple of weeks it's been and what outlet you were reading, he was either in the bag for WWE or he was about to appear on AEW. The truth is that is yet to be decided, and he is reportedly not yet signed, but that both AEW and WWE have been bidding for his services. The offer that AEW made is reportedly larger. And of course, Okada has connections there with, the Forbidden Door, having worked for Tony Khan before. He has friendships with Kenny and the Bucks and Bryan Danielson. That should work in their favor, you'd think. But then again, don't count the E out, man. If it's a bidding war and they want him, Okada has also been pretty clear in the past that on his bucket list is a WrestleMania match. And that, of course, can only happen if you're in WWE. It will be interesting to see where Okada will go. Wherever he goes, it's a signing that's going to make that organization better. And you can argue who needs him and who doesn't need him. Either would be lucky to have him.
Absolutely. I mean, I think AEW's got Will Ospreay, so WWE could get Okada. I mean, that's pretty fair trade-off right there. Ospreay, Okada, but then you put Ospreay and Okada in the same organization again, and whew.
Poor New Japan, though, right?
They have got to stop letting all of their major talents expired contracts land on the same time because they build these people up, then they come to America. It has been constant since like AJ, the Good Brothers and Shinsuke left, Kenny, the Bucks, Cody, Hangman.
With everyone else leaving them, it was some good news this week for New Japan that not everyone is leaving. Hiromu Takahashi is going to remain with New Japan for the foreseeable future, as he just signed a 6-year deal to remain with the promotion. Wow. Again, after losing so much top talent, I'm sure New Japan is very pleased to have locked up the 6-time IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion in Hiromu. And Doug, I'm going to take us home on the news segment here by some fans were probably thinking Royal Rumble could include a few surprises that didn't happen. And this one was thrown into the mix. And even though it wasn't likely, it was hoped for. That when are we going to see that Big E return? As heartwarming as that would have been, Big E has provided an update on his status. And that update is really, there is no update as far as when he'll have an in-ring return and no timetable. It's been 2 years since the scary spot that broke E's neck when he didn't get full rotation on a Ridge Holland suplex to the floor. And Big E said that he will make the smartest decision for him and his family, and that as much as he would like an in-ring return, that he did not get into the world of pro wrestling to end up in a wheelchair. And
understood. Absolutely.
Completely the right way to look at it, instead of like some of these folks that are so obsessed that they put their own personal and future well-being at risk for the short term. So continue to get well, Big E. And if we just have to have you as an on-screen talent or put you on the microphone, because that guy would lighten up any desk that he was at. We just want him healthy.
Yes, that would be great. Yeah, absolutely. I want to see a healthy Big E, regardless of where he returns and when he returns.
Wherever. Doug.
Kevin, it's time to fix some things, isn't it?
We got to fix some things, man.
I don't know.
Tony's watching. I know you're friends. I know I know you're a little estranged compared to your prior relationship, but I know you're all still close enough that I'm sure you have Tony tuning in tonight.
I'm sure he's watching. I mean, because he's got no opposition programming on tonight at all, so he's gonna watch us and go straight into NXT and see who he may be able to scoop out of there at some point in the future.
I never thought we'd be at the point that we'd have this as our main event topic. But then again, all good things come to an end. And while it was a hot run, there's never been a promotion in the history of wrestling that stays on that hot run. You have to rebuild, you have to recharge, you have to reload, and then the critics come for you. There were a lot of us that I know flocked to Tony Khan because we didn't like Vince McMahon's booking, and then we have an alternative. And I think it's in some ways a little ironic that it took the fall of Vince McMahon to now have so many fans running away from Tony Khan and back to WWE because they're sick of Tony's booking. There's no one thing, Doug, that's going to fix all of this, and it's not like it's broken beyond a repair or watchability. It's still a great product. It's definitely slipped. And I think with that, we can at least start pointing us back in the right direction of what AEW was or what we all would like for it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's not beyond hope, but, I think to some of the more dramatic corners of the internet wrestling community, AEW is dead at this point, just like, WrestleMania 40's dead. Neither one of those things is the case, but
not at all.
There are problems, and we're going to talk about those tonight.
I think, and this may be maybe one I should have saved for last, but to me, it is Tony's creation, and Tony was definitely an asset to AEW in its early years. But to me now, he can sometimes be its biggest detriment. And sorry, Tony, but it's true. It's just I'd like to see Tony take a rest. Khan was obviously overstretched by trying to do everything himself. He did finally realize that, I believe. He brought in some creative help by giving bigger roles to guys like Christopher Daniels and Bryan Danielson, for example. But still, though, it's not the formal writing and producer structure you see in WWE. Khan is still very involved, and at times the on-screen product, I think, shows that perhaps he's just tapped out.
And that, that's one of the things I have on my list too, creative burnout in general. But that all does come back to Tony, because Tony's the booker, he's the writer, he's the producer, he's the showrunner. He's probably taking out the trash at the end of the night and cleaning up the arenas before they leave. I mean, we've seen this guy live multiple times at this point, and this dude has so much energy when he comes out to address that audience. He's just bouncing around. He's going to burn out, and this is AEW's one of 5 of his businesses anyway, because
that's true. We only think of his like wrestling passion as where he's throwing all of his time and being too stretched. He's stretched in other ways as well. That's an excellent point.
I mean, kudos to him for being such an energetic person who can juggle all this, but at this point, can he juggle all this? Does he need a little bit more help? And I think he does need a little bit more help. Yeah. And I really think that one of the problems, to piggyback off you and talking about Tony, is that this is a billionaire who has a whole bunch of really cool toys he always wanted. And sometimes that line between the fan and the owner, the booker, the promoter that came up in the business, like, the man who built WWE, there's a huge difference there between those two. Sometimes I think he books for himself, which, there's a section of the audience like that's going to love that booking, and then other times I'm not sure what he's doing, and I'm not sure he knows what he's doing. It's kind of like you're just flying by the seat of your pants.
Well, that is a great segue into something that I had on my list, and that is the booking, the hot shot booking. He burns bright, but burns fast. He goes through storylines way too quickly. He gives away way too much. I mean, when you say he's a big fan and he's doing a product, I mean, AEW kind of started out like, this is the product for wrestling fans. We give the fans what they wanted. And what started out as fan service now has kind of devolved into giving everyone everything all of the time. And that almost adds up to nothing. Doesn't it?
He's become a meme now with, his major announcements that are just right around the corner. His major announcements about announcements. Even. And we joke, but he did a major announcement about making a major announcement.
Yes, he
So I
certainly
mean,
did. And we got another one this Wednesday, right?
I
Yeah,
know,
another special. And
but
actually, I'm glad that's a great point you bring up, because when AEW started, Tony Khan very much did not want to be the quote unquote Vince McMahon, as he would say. I don't want to be the
mhm,
centerpiece. And then he started slowly showing up on TNA when
yes,
they had that relationship. And
yes,
before you know it, they dropped Tony's name on the announce desk like it's Mr. McMahon back in the day. I mean, he's
uh-huh.
so now a central part of the show. I don't know if that was his intention, but it's never a good look when the owner makes himself so central to everything.
It really isn't. And then you have like an issue with like CM Punk with the, all out, like, the fallout from all out and just that press conference afterwards where this man does not look like any type of leader. Unfortunately, he looks like a scared little boy that's, watching his idol have a meltdown, which is probably what was happening, for being quite honest. I mean,
You know, I didn't even have this on my list to talk about, but you saying that just makes me want to say to you, for all we have said about Vince McMahon and all we will say, could
oh,
you imagine Vince McMahon
never,
at that table?
never. That would never happen. Punk, First of all,
I mean,
Punk would have never have done that if that were he was setting beside. He would have never have done it. He would have known better. I don't care how much of a rebel or how much of a Punk fan you think he is, or how much of a true Punk you believe him to be. Even he would have drawn the line there and would not have done that.
do you think then that Tony maybe is a bit of, I mean, I know everyone loves him as a boss. You hear that a lot. It's like, oh, Tony's great. He's receptive. But, you know, the iron fist approach of a Vince McMahon maybe isn't the best approach either. But do you think that there's pluses and minuses to everything? Do you think you're starting to see the disadvantage of everyone trying to get one person's ear, and Tony being such a mark himself? I mean, supposedly he would be caught chanting CM Punk behind the scenes. Like, that's legit a story that
Right. I mean,
he would do those
and
sort of things.
again, I totally get that. You give either you or I a few $billion and let us start a wrestling company. It's going to look a lot like AEW. I'm going to be that scared little kid watching my idol have a meltdown next to me and not know what to do too. I'm not calling Tony out for that at all, because Tony did not come up in that world, right?
No.
But you look at Vince. Vince grew up in that world. Vince knows how to handle those type of individuals. There's no level of that exists in Tony's world. Maybe dealing with football players, soccer players to some degree, but I think we're talking about a completely different beast, a completely different athlete. But when we're talking about professional wrestlers, yeah, we're not just talking about athletes. We're talking about these creative performers that, are the artistic folks are a little wacky, Kevin. And then,
A little bit wacky.
we're a little bit wacky. We know this. So I think it's a much different beast to have to handle than what he's ever handled before, and it's taken a while to get around to it. Then you put in the fanboy element there, and again, it's not a knock on him. Had we this kind of money, we would have something that looks very much like AEW, I'm sure.
And if anyone, by the way, out there wants to test the theory by giving Doug and I that kind of money, we will be happy to, to run the
Yes,
petri dish test, and we'll see how it turns out.
absolutely. It doesn't even have to be a couple billion. We could probably do
That's true.
something decent for a few million. I mean, let's
Link in
experiment.
bio.
Right? Let's get
Put
that
your,
link in the bio. We'll start almost said an OnlyFans. We're not starting an OnlyFans. We'll start. Well, if
put
it'll
in a
fund the
wrestling
wrestling,
company. Yeah, sure. All right.
we're
Tony's not going to
digressing.
fix himself. I
No,
mean, I know that is the biggest need, and one of the reasons I wanted to have it up front. There are some smaller things, though, that I think that, again, if the Emperor doesn't realize he's not wearing clothes and probably doesn't do what he needs to do for his own sake at this point, there are some things he can do with the product, with him still being the creative. I think that will help. And again, I understand the reason behind it. This next one, though, is a more practical matter to me, and ROH just needs to be ran at Universal Studios or some other similar small, make it a studio wrestling show. There was a report recently by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter suggesting that the addition of ROH on top of already long AEW TV tapings might be one of the things hurting ticket sales. Attendance is down, of course. We've been talking about that. Attendance is down across the board. But after a long collision taping, adding ROH matches to that has some, I mean, most fans aren't going to just up and leave in the middle of something they paid for, but they are maybe going to go home and go, I'm leaving on a down note. That was too long. I'm too tired. Next time you're in town, guess what? They don't come back.
Right.
And ROH has honestly got a lot of, I think, what is wrong. You could say it's part of the stretching of Tony's creative direction. Mm-hmm. It's obviously maybe a drag on ticket sales. It needs its own TV deal and or streaming show. If you can do that, if you can do that, sure. Let's just then keep those brands separate. ROH guys are ROH guys. AEW guys are AEW guys. If you can't get your own TV or streaming rights deal, then I hate to say it, ROH needs to fold. It's a noble experiment, but at this point, you're going to have it sink or swim on its own. And we're a couple of years into this noble experiment, Doug, and it's not changed.
So do you think, I'm just thinking brand splits while you're talking about this here. And, perhaps this is a way to, fix AEW, because AEW has a lot of TV hours right now, and I'm not really sure what they're doing with all these hours. It seems like they have trouble with these hours. ROH has no TV hours, really.
None.
Why don't we, like I'm in the boardroom right now talking to Tony, pitching things, but how about, we consider a Raw SmackDown type situation here where, one of these shows that's on 3 times a week now is an ROH show. We have a legitimate brand split where we have AEW and ROH. Acknowledge that these work together and have those cross pay-per-views they're still pay-per-views right now. Have those cross promotional pay-per-views once in a while, and then others have their individual pay-per-views. You can rotate more talent like that, because there's a lot of talent in both of these organizations that aren't seeing the light of day.
I honestly had that on my to-do as well, because and for me, I had it specifically as give them Rampage, because I know no executive is going to want to look at that ROH roster. No offense to them. People don't know ROH on a mainstream platform like a TNT or TBS. Those executives are not going, they're going to want Kenny, the Bucks, Jericho. They're not going to want the ROH roster at 8:00 on Wednesday or Saturday. But Rampage ratings aren't great. And give them Rampage. Give them 1 hour late on a Friday evening, not a great time, but that's still more people that is watching on a $9.99 a month Honor Club, that who knows how many people are watching the current ROH show. It's still better. And Doug, and I hate to say this next one too, but trim the talent roster. Even with 2 brands, 3 shows, Honor Club, you don't have enough time to feature all the talent. Can you imagine a Raw that doesn't have Seth Rollins or something along those lines? Right. I mean, if he's gone a week. You have big stars on AEW that, and this is also reportedly hurting ticket sales. If you pay and you think you're going to see these 4 or 5 guys or gals that you're really excited about, there's a very good chance that you're not. Big stars disappear from AEW for weeks at a time. Just because there's too many people to be featured, even with all the additional hours. I hate, again, you don't want to see people lose their jobs, but you also at some point need to prioritize the overall health of your product over just wanting to make sure everyone has a contract, which, while admirable, is not sustainable.
Yeah, I agree. It's admirable. However, you risk getting into a needs of the many outweighs the needs of the one or the few, because if you're trying to take care of everybody, you're going to end up in a situation where you can't take care of anybody. And if you thin out the roster, I hate to say it, but thin out that roster, there's a lot of these people who can go back to the indies. Maybe they go back to WWE, they go back to Japan, they go to Mexico, they make something of themselves. I hate to keep going back to Cody right now, but Cody leaves WWE, works the indies, goes to New Japan, buddies up with Kenny and the Young Bucks, becomes part of this elite circle. Next thing you know, he's got his own promotion. He goes back to WWE, and now we have, hashtag we want Cody going on right now. You know,
Something you said there. There's so much more in the way of rumors of folks who are dissatisfied in AEW and want to go back.
mm-hmm.
There's an easy one. Let them.
Yeah.
You have too many talent as it is. You saw the CM Punk situation, how it played out. If you actually have disgruntled folks there, let them out of their contract or send them home, and don't worry, let their contracts expire and just let them go.
Yeah. Let them go. Let Malachi Black go back to being Aleister Black. Let him go. I'm sure Buddy Murphy would love to be on the same show as his significant other.
Yeah.
So let I love the House of Black, but let them go. Let Miro be Miro, and if you're not, let him and CJ go back. Let them go.
Yeah. Yeah, there's way too many places that people can find work that if they want to go back and those doors are now open to them again, don't hold on to them out of grudge. You have more than enough talent to put on great shows. And in fact, Doug and I are in agreement here. You have too much talent sometimes to put on a coherent show. And that just also causes you to run through storylines quickly as you're just trying to get everybody and everything cycled on too quick of a wheel.
Yeah.
Speaking of too much, Doug, and too many, I think you're going to agree with this one.
Absolutely.
There we go. We go. On your list. Has to be on your list, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can go ahead.
Let's have one of those
page up.
Let's have one of those Tony Khan tournaments that he loves so well, and let's just merge some titles.
Yeah. Our tournament for tournament titles. The last tournament I got so confused with what was going on with it.
Okay, so that is also on my list. Speaking of those tournaments, let's have some tournaments to merge some titles and then stop having those tournaments.
I mean, I'm just waiting for like an old school Russo like tournament on a pole match.
Let's give him one. Let's give him his King of the Ring. Make it the Owen Hart thing. I think that's
yes,
fine.
I like that.
Let's just not. Yeah, the Owen Hart one in tribute to him. Great. We have our annual tournament, but everything doesn't need to be a tournament. Though, if it meant getting rid of some title belts, I'm absolutely in favor of that. Keep the ROH titles on ROH. Keep the AEW titles on AEW. Keep any Forbidden Door style wrestlers in non-title matches, or mention that they're champions in another organization, but don't have all of them out there with their belts on. It's fine to mention it, but honestly, we just dilute everything because everyone on my screen is walking around with a shiny object.
So true.
There's no challengers anywhere.
Everybody's a champion. It's truly a night of champions. That champion versus champion thing that happens.
There we go.
Get it out of
here. I am also in favor of giving Jim Ross more executive responsibilities. Let's make Jim Ross be in charge of talent. I know his health has kept him pretty limited and with announcing, and to be honest, he's not the same announcer he was in his heyday anyway. But he did that head of talent relations thing for a long, long time in WWE, and it is worth noting that it was a very profitable period of WWE television, probably one of the more profitable periods in their history. I think as an executive, he could help AEW with some of these tough roster decisions that we think they need to make, and not be the fan that Tony is and want to make sure everyone has a contract. I bet I would even bet on him for booking decisions as well. Just let JR be an executive.
That is a very good point, because I mean, there's a lot of good wrestling minds in AEW. You've got Christopher Daniels, you got JR, you got Don Callis is there. You've got really good minds there.
Some of who have had success as bookers and or talent guys in other companies.
Yes.
Make that real formal and official. Create that structure. Doug, I'd also like to see more clearly defined faces and heels. as well as I would love to see referees actually enforcing the rules. And I know those two things are common problems in all of modern wrestling. Everybody plays fast and loose with that, but I hate to say it, AEW seems to be by far the worst offender when it comes to that.
It
Every
is.
tag match looks like I'm watching AAA or something, and it's everyone in all the time, and it doesn't matter what's
It's
happening.
because pretty much those are the AEW tag rules. Everyone in all the time. Tags don't matter,
Don't
unless they
matter.
do. And then they do. When they don't, they don't. Yeah, I mean, it's a very loose indie, very very loose indie style when it comes to that. And then you've got the announcers, especially the more seasoned announcers, trying to cover it. You've got Shivani when JR was there, trying to also do it, talking about how well this referee knows what's really at stake here and doesn't want to count them out, or and
He's using
his
his discretion.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
When was the last time you even saw a count out or a disqualification in AEW? I mean, I'm not
I
in
don't.
favor of
Yeah.
matches ending in those kind of cop outs, but when you don't have any rules and then you don't enforce any rules, I mean, everything kind of the prefabrication that is the world of wrestling, where we pretend these rules exist and we
Yes.
have these stories within these rules. When those aren't evident, it kind of becomes a little chaotic.
Because we get into this situation like, okay, what are the rules here? It's kind of like when we watch the Royal Rumble every year, because I think the rules slightly evolve, or they go forward or they go back depending on what's needed, and that's the way of wrestling. But I think AEW takes it to an extreme.
An extreme degree. Yeah, everything
Yeah,
is an extreme match. I mean,
yeah,
practically anything
exactly.
goes. Um, Collision. I know we've talked about it. You said that it's not the death of AEW, despite some folks thinking that. I mean, Collision was just new in 2023. It's easy to forget that they doubled their real estate on major television, had their biggest show with Wembley. So it wasn't all doom and gloom over the last year for AEW. But Collision has been a bit of a mixed bag. The CM Punk experiment being a huge part of that. But I think the biggest thing they could do now, if they are intent on keeping it on Saturdays, you move it to 6, or heck, move it to 6:05 if you want
Yes,
to. Yeah,
that 6:05. Absolutely, that's what I was going to say. Move it to 6:05 on Saturdays.
man, I know that there's prestige in, hey, we're prime time, but that doesn't really matter anymore. And
Yeah.
the ratings are slipping on that show anyway. It doesn't help when you find yourself opposite a Royal Rumble like they would have done this last week,
Mhm.
or even they have to sometimes change the airings of Collision to avoid competing with their own pay-per-views when they do them on Saturdays. It's just a bad time going opposite other wrestling. So going at 6 would only allow Collision to not only avoid WWE's pay-per-views, but when AEW has a pay-per-view, turn that 2 hours of Collision into buy now. Here's your
Yeah.
pre-show. It's
Here's your
right
pre-show.
there.
And that way you are not burning out an audience that Friday before because they have to sit through a live
Yes.
rampage and then a taped collision that's going to
Yeah.
air, prior to, or, on some other night than their pay-per-view that's
And
going to
then
happen
2
on
hours of
Saturday.
pre-show matches for the pay-per-view that is
Yes.
about to happen. Just make that your Collision.
Yeah. I love that idea. Tony, get on that, dude.
Get
Come
on
on.
it. And Doug, I know you're kind of iffy on brand splits, but I do think if there was at least a soft brand split and not the whole like, hey, the guys that like CM Punk and the guys that can't get along with CM Punk brand split, I do think that at least when Punk was there, I have to say there was definitely more of a this is a Collision guy and this is a Dynamite guy, and it allowed more men and women to have their own screen time. I think that I liked at least the soft brand split between the two.
You know what? It was kind of funny that there was definitely that brand split because you had your CM Punk guys and your Elite guys. Is basically
Yeah,
those camps that those broke
yeah.
down into, and that was really interesting. Again, I think it could be done with ROH, but yeah, you do a brand split. Then you have your Dynamite and your Collision for that, ROH for Rampage. I think all that would work,
I think
but
there is something to be said for knowing when you're going to see certain wrestlers. Like if you just know, hey, if I don't catch Collision, it doesn't matter. I'll see him on Wednesday. If you knew that you had to see a certain wrestler that you loved on a certain night, you're more likely to tune in on that night.
right. I think that was Malachi Black's whole argument for being, a Collision guy and being on on Collision, we don't do Wednesday nights. House of Black is a Collision, group.
Yeah.
You'll see us on Saturdays if you want to see us.
Yeah.
And
And
that sells tickets itself. I mean, Raw and SmackDown tour separately.
yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're thinking you're burning out your towns, if it's a different roster showing up to that town, and you run this town twice a year if you want, but it's different rosters every time.
Yeah.
You might go back twice.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, this one maybe is I don't know. Maybe you could say it's not fair what I'm about to do to Tony here, because I know I've mentioned taking his creative finger off of everything. But while we're messing with his fingers, can we also just take his phone out of his hand?
Yes. Just suspend his X. Let's do that. Get rid of his Twitter, X, whatever it's called today. Get rid of that. Don't let him near it.
Do you think that there's anything he says and does there at this point that is making him or AEW more fans? Or do you think, if anything, he's turning the haters into, is it making hard for the believers to stand by Tony when he makes a fool of himself on a regular basis?
Wrestling fans, especially the internet wrestling fans, we are such a tribal community. I get caught up in this myself. I try not to. I try and remain that neutral journalistic integrity.
Let's go say you're a wrestling journalist.
But, there's so much tribalism involved. The people who are going to be behind Tony when he's going to be that are always going to be behind. And the people who are always going to hate Tony for, before he even hits send on his tweets, are always going to hate him. And then there's going to be those people who are like, I think you and I, who are in the middle going, no, stop it. Wrestling is good for everybody when it's good for everybody. Rising tide lifts all boats and all that good fun stuff. This is a great time to be a wrestling fan. Look at all this talent we have. Look at all these opportunities we have to see people. If there's enough to go around, stop fighting, guys. Stop it.
How about this one, Doug? Enough of the multi-person matches, enough of the garbage matches. Save them for a few times a year, not every week on television.
Garbage matches and I love stables, love stables. I also like the Triple H like stables because there's so many WWE.
There's so many now.
So many that Vince is gone. But that's beside the point. Tony clearly also loves stables, but that gets into some of these ridiculous garbage matches when you have great talent, riding a bicycle around a ring, whacking people on the head with like a pool noodle or whatever. This is what this is what happens. When you get to that point. So let's maybe he can't wrestle like he used to because of the way and style he's wrestled in the past. There's at least one more guy in there that's not going to be able to wrestle like that in another 2 years if he keeps going the way he is. Let's reel some of this stuff back in. Let's
stop. And now that you've said all that, I kind of wish I'd have made the thumbnail for this night show is Ibushi on a bike. We could have just called it Ibushi on a bike to sum up one of the worst things that we've seen that summarize where AEW is at the moment. Doug, I got two more. I don't know how many you have.
Mine were much more broad and generalized, and we've hit on a lot of them. So
I think you'll agree with my last two then. A streaming deal. AEW needs a streaming home to reduce the annual cost of keeping up with the product, especially if they're going to add to the product. And then lastly, I think we all can agree to this. If you're going to have yourself a streaming deal, and if you're going to have yourself more pay-per-views, which streaming deal or not, that is what's on tap for 2024, we have to make them shorter. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. I do have a strategic partnership, which falls in line with the streaming deal, absolutely. But yes, we cannot have these 16-hour. I mean, it's like the old school WrestleMania. It should start at like 1 in the afternoon, and it goes till like past midnight. That's a normal like 5-match AEW show.
So, I mean, I'll go back to the tournament thing. I'll give you one. You can have your King of the Ring. I'll give you the one time a year where you can go, this is the big extravaganza. But when every pay-per-view is at least 5 hours, they all can't be your Wrestle Kingdom. They all can't be your Mania. You got to rein it in.
Agreed.
And Doug, with that, I know that there is a lot in the way that could be done. Some of it is short term. Some of it is low hanging fruit that can make the product better now. It is not a bad product. They have not completely lost their way. This is not the dying days of WCW, as
It is
some
not. No.
overhyping internet folks. We are not those internet folks. We are the internet folks that
We're those
say
other ones.
we're those other ones. That Doug was maybe once Dynamite Doug, but now he's just Doug again because Tony needs a little bit of help. And these are some major things, but those minor things, if he even listened to 3 or 4 of those, it would do a great service that would benefit the product.
Yeah, and I think that there's enough of where AEW came from and what they started as. I think there's still enough of that there to listen to the fan base, not just us, but listen to us, Tony.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about. Or if anybody wants to give us a couple of million to start our own, and go against AEW, we'll take that challenge. We will take that challenge absolutely. We just need a benefactor. But in the meantime, I think AEW is not beyond salvation. It's just it's hit some bumpy roads.
Tony, take our challenge. Institute any 2 or 3 of these. Let's see how it plays out for you. You'll be happy. Doug, let's make the fans happy by getting out of here before the pay-per-view, by going to our big finish.
That's right. We promised a crisp hour tonight, and we are going to end on time and under budget, which is good because this show doesn't have a budget.
It's very good. My botch of the week. You want to go botch your first?
Let's go botch. Let's go botch because I've got a lot of WWE to rant about here at the end of the show.
Good old Jim Ross's bad old health. The legendary voice of wrestling has just had a really tough year health wise. And then a couple of days ago, he posted that he'd undergone successful cancer surgery on his hip. Jim Ross is a national treasure. So enough with the bad health for Jim Ross. Let's leave the man alone. Let's get this national treasure either back on our TV screen or in the office or just well again. I hate that for Jim Ross, one of my favorites of all time. So bad on you, health issues.
Bad on you, cancer. I can't disagree with that.
We all can agree. Cancer's a botch. Don't accidentally give a thumbs up here, Doug.
Get my hands out of the screen. So, my botch is a bit more lighthearted, but still I've got to do a bit of a rant about a bit more lighthearted than cancer. I'm not sure how
that was. Yeah.
But, I mentioned it earlier in the show, the way WWE Creative ran down both of their top tier belts this week and their championships. Why does Cody even want to challenge for either one of these now? I mean, the way Seth runs down, Roman's belt, the way Roman runs down Seth. I'm sure it seemed like a good idea at the time. I get what they're going for, but surely there is a better way to do this. At least Cody. And again, I am not a big Cody fan, but I'm giving a lot of love to the American Nightmare, and he's like the booking nightmare right now, I guess. But at least Cody did his best to bring a little legitimacy back to the title that Roman has. It's the title he wants. It's the title his dad went after. It's, the Bruno Sammartino title, but still, I think the damage was done by both of them at that point. So I'm calling that a botch with WWE Creative just running down their top tier belts like that.
So I'm finding the silver lining in your cloud, Doug. My performer of the week, Cody Rhodes.
Hey, let me stop you right there. Also, my performer of the week, Cody Rhodes. Look, Cody.
And that is one where I would like for you to send to me for framing that Doug picked Cody Rhodes for his performer of the week. I want to date that and hang it on the wall.
Right there. Just screenshot it, everybody. Cody.
Seriously, whatever you think of Cody Rhodes.
Okay, my son doesn't believe that I picked Cody.
I am shocked. But how, regardless of how you felt about Cody personally, how could you not feel sorry for the man?
Yes.
And then admire what he went and did. You talk about a businessman despite his own personal interests. First, there was that great, reaction whether or not, and I agree with the way that Seth talked about the belt, but the promo itself, the compelling, like, hey, I'm going to try to talk you out of what everyone knows you're
Sure.
wanting to do. It was a great job by both men. Seth's case was compelling, obviously, to Rhodes, and then Rhodes walks out on SmackDown and in a very classy and very believable way steps aside from what we all know is his main reason for having returned to WWE to begin with, to do what's best for business. Obviously an executive at heart. His father was an executive, but still, I'm sure you were doing the same thing. Were you looking at his face and wondering what The Rock was whispering to him and all that? I mean, you talk about being the bigger person. Cody Rhodes, man.
You know, for all those reasons, exactly is why Cody is my guy this week too. Yeah, I really look at Cody differently because ever since Cody left AEW, and this is my bit of my tribalism showing, but you know, always thought Cody was a weaker link. You know, his link to wrestling was really his father, and he got to cling to that name. Not that he's a bad worker, but there
No.
are others better.
Yeah,
I just believe that there are others better. But Cody, it showed me something I didn't quite think was there. I thought he was more out for himself, especially with jumping back over from AEW, this thing he created to go back over here. I really think maybe he was legit, when he was talking about, he didn't want to be the gatekeeper. He didn't want to be that gateway. There was still stuff in wrestling he wanted to do. And he realized he could not do that as an executive. So he went back to WWE to do those things. And well, apparently he can't do those things as a wrestler either. And I did see I know, okay, we still got 5 minutes. I can rant for a little bit longer. I did see on one of the dirt sheets today, they were talking about how Cody Rhodes is truly more CM Punk than CM Punk because now Cody's been screwed out of a WrestleMania main event by The Rock.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, Cody earned his spot, and then he further earned my respect by going out there and basically giving it away for the good of the business and the Mania card. So, I mean, I think Cody made a lot of new fans, or at least made some, even begrudging fans like Doug go,
yeah,
much respect. I mean, there's nothing but respect for what he selflessly did, for what was, again, I know we use the cliche, but it was best for business.
It was best for business. I almost wore my AEW American Nightmares t-shirt tonight, but it's cold in the studio, so we got Wu-Tang instead.
Doug, let's wrap it up. Match of the week. What do the people need to go see?
Well, I think the people just need to check out the wackiness that's going on X and on Twitter and on really any internet, because, for me, the match of the week is the WWE Universe versus WWE Creative and this decision to put Rock in the main event, because it is epic. If you just Google WWE Universe or check out the hashtag We Want Cody. This it is very interesting to me, and I've got to say that's got to be the match of the week. And I think we're going to get a couple more matches out of this before there's a rubber match and there's an end to this. But I just can't wait.
This is definitely something that will have to follow through to Mania, because this furor that's erupting is not going away and is actually stronger than I thought. I knew Cody was popular, and I thought people would be so happy to see The Rock that wouldn't be the case.
Yes. Yeah, I think, Rock is real close to getting the same kind of reaction he got when he tried to come out and save Roman at WrestleMania a few years ago.
My match is less philosophical, but I went with Horechiko versus Bryan Danielson from Collision.
Yes.
I was not familiar really with the CMLL star, but my goodness, am I now? Obviously, Bryan Danielson could make Doug and I look good, but that man held his own. I don't know how many times I have had Danielson in one of my matches of the week. I'm sure he probably is near the top of the list, but
yeah,
when you can do it at that level, I mean, I call it like I see it. Go see that match.
Go see that match. There you go. Kevin,
Doug, look at this, man.
On time, under budget. 2 Bros Wrestling Show.
We are with you next week, not on our normal Sunday night, because no, we don't want to go head to head with NXT, but we really don't want to go head to head with the Super Bowl on you. We're going to do a special show, though, by delaying it just a couple of days. We can be on Valentine's Day, and we have a very Valentine's theme when we talk the wrestling bromance. An appropriate topic for the two bros to be talking about.
Absolutely.
Until then, Tuesday night on the 14th, 8 o'clock live. We'll see you then. Go watch NXT Vengeance Day.
Go watch it. It'll be on in a minute. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.